that good enough, David, or no?
Can you hear me, Jaime? I cannot hear you. Nada. Let me.
Okay, how about now?
I can hear you now, Jaime.
Perfect.
Okay.
I guess I should have turned on my speaker, Chinga.
I was on one of those a little bit earlier. The same thing happened. I said I can't hear you.
Oh yeah. So I don't know what Mr. Hinojosa did, but mandó un cancellation. So I've been having people call me and send me.
I saw that.
Yeah, I don't know what he did, and he replied to everybody. So me habló Mr. Moore. I've had about maybe 6 emails and about 5 phone calls. I'm like, yes, we're still on. So I don't know.
The only reason I didn't call you because
we had already talked.
We had talked, and I said, well, I don't have to. I mean, I know we're going to be on, So,
yeah. Yeah. So just so you know, sir, but I texted, Commissioner Fuentes, everybody. I mean, at least we can get a quorum going.
Yeah.
Yes.
Commish, ¿cómo anda?
Okay, there's a light ring.
Can you hear me, Commish?
Yes, sir. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing well, brother. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Good. Jaime.
Mande, sir.
One of the things that I'm going to bring up is we have to have those meetings.
Yes, the pre-planning meetings. Yes,
the pre-planning meetings. Okay. We gotta. I mean, the format is going to have to be Zoom because the area is too large for us to.
Of course, yes, sir.
Yeah.
So we're ready to set it up. I know that I've been discussing it with Christina from HAF, and we'll get on it. Right after this meeting, maybe even pick a date.
Do they do that for us, or do we do it? What's the? Is it their part of their role?
It'll be part of their role, yes, sir.
Okay.
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we've already discussed it, and it's just it's kind of like what we're having now, I guess, but it's just more outreach, right? That we'll have to provide again to the public, see if we can get more people involved. But yes, sir. Okay. That's one of the items that
I hope she has some suggestions on her presentation, or either Christina or whoever else is going to present from that.
I believe there'll be maybe 2 or 3 members from their team commit, and I want to say they got a 30-40 minute presentation. So we do have an item discussion and presentation, so we can ask and see what their plan is. But yeah, she's been looking into it.
At the meeting that I had with all of the chairs from around the state, man, everybody's been having meetings that last 3, 4, 5, 6 hours.
Okay.
I haven't figured out, I said, well, I mean, are we as a planning group supposed to get that technical with everything at this point in time?
At this point, I don't think so, Commissioner, because there's really no data to go through. So no, I don't think at this
I
point
mean-
we should be. I mean, we switched through our bylaws pretty quick and implemented our stuff.
Yeah,
But it'd be
Yeah,
good.
because-
Maybe one of our liaisons can tell us what the 5-6 hours are all about.
yeah, because, I mean, and fortunately for me, they start with Region 1 and each one of us gives a short presentation. And everyone was talking, I mean, they're talking like they're the technical experts. And I finally said, we are more of a planning group. And then we have a planning group sponsor that facilitates our planning group. And then we have, the folks that are going to do the work for us.
No, es
I
que no
don't
tiene nada que hacer, Commish. No tiene nada que hacer. Aquellos andan nomás ahí.
Pero todo el estado, nomás nosotros,
No sé, it's crazy.
it's crazy,
Yeah.
I mean, I really don't want, to go more than an hour at any meeting for the sake of everybody's time.
Yes,
Yes, sir. That's
I mean,
correct.
If we
Yes,
can
sir.
do it quicker, I don't have a problem, but I started feeling guilty that we're not doing our job,
I don't think that's the case, sir.
Yeah, you've done a good job. No, you really have. You get to the point, get it addressed, and move on. That's good.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have time for all this. I thought you guys would be over there with your friend,
¿Cuáles de ellos?
pues los que vinieron a visitarnos ahora.
Ah, ¿qué pasó?
Abran las compuertas.
No.
Tiene de agua todo.
Okay, I'm gonna start letting in some of the guests, Commissioner.
Okay, I'll behave.
You got
I'll mute.
Hello.
Hi, ma'am.
Hello. Oops.
Hey, hi,
Yeah.
David Fuentes here.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Can everyone hear me okay? Everybody hear me okay? We're good?
I hear you.
Perfect.
Hey, Commissioner Garza, how did the South Texas conference go? You're on mute, sir.
Very well. Okay. Everything, we missed you.
Yeah, I'm
Admit-
sorry. It's just unfortunate. I had a family vacation planned. at
Yeah,
this
no.
time.
Your son was playing somewhere. That's what one of the girls told me.
Yes, sir.
Hope he
Yes,
did
sir.
well
So-
and enjoyed it.
well, it was an experience, a great experience. So it was good.
But
Thank
but
you.
it's good to be missed. Okay, that's why we missed you.
I'll take it. If you say it's
Yeah.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
I needed somebody to join me for breakfast.
Hey, I would have been there sitting right next to you at Grapevine.
I know. But it
Yes,
was,
sir.
the attendance, they had like 120 late registration folks. Yeah, I think there were up to 400 people that signed up. So
It's a great
the
place
island,
to have a conference.
yeah, the island is loving it, because there's a lot of folks, a lot of families came down from all over the state.
That's great. That's great.
We had, Ellie was here.
I'm sorry, say that again, sir.
Ellie was here. Ellie told us,
Oh, okay,
Commissioner,
great. Yes, sir.
she's still here. Yeah.
Excellent. It finishes what, tomorrow?
Tomorrow at noon. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Jaime, how are we doing with participants?
They're logging on as we speak, Commissioner.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
tell me when you're ready, okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Calen como prioridad.
Estamos entendiendo un poquito.
Hey, Jaime,
Yes, sir.
real quick, since I'm driving and there's some spots where I may not have good connection, if I happen to drop off, I'll jump back on as soon as possible, but I will be here.
Yes, sir, Commissioner. I'll be looking at that.
Thank you.
If we can have everyone please put their phones on mute. Chairman Garza, it's 3 p.m. and we are ready to start, sir, whenever you are.
Okay, I will go ahead and call the meeting to order. Would you please establish a quorum for us, Jaime?
Yes, sir. At this time, I will go through roll call. Jose Hinojosa.
Here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. Chairman Garza.
Here.
Daniel Lucio. Daniel Lucio. Hudson Deoy. Hudson Deoy. Commissioner David Fuentes. Commissioner David Fuentes. I know he was on a minute ago, so we'll.
He's on the road.
Perfect. Mr. Joey Trevino. Mr. Joey Trevino. Ms. Vanessa Rosales Herrera. Ms. Vanessa Rosales Herrera. Mr. Joe Khalifa.
I'm here. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Joe. Mr. Jose Caso.
Present.
Thank you, Mr. Caso. Ms. Sonia Lambert. I know I saw Ms. Lambert.
He's on.
Okay, perfect. Mr. Riazul Mia. Mr. Riazul Mia. Commissioner Eduardo Gonzalez. Commissioner Eduardo Gonzalez. Commissioner Raul Peña Jr. Commissioner Raul Peña Jr. Mr. Alan Moore.
Here.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Mr. Willie Cupid.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you, Mr. Cupid. Mr. Tim Freer. Mr. Tim Freer. Miss Nelda Barrera. Miss Nelda Barrera. Mr. Adrian Perez. Adrian Perez. Miss Shonda Mace. I'm sorry. Mr. Perez, are you on?
Oh, I'm here, sorry.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Mace. Miss Megan Ingram.
Here, Jaime.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. David Ramirez.
I'm here.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Manny Cruz. Okay, I need to let Mr. Cruz in. Mr. Cruz, for the record, is on. I just admitted him on the call.
Hold on. Give me a minute.
Mr. Ramon Macias. Mr. Ramon Macias. And Ms. Lupita Trinidad Ramos. Ms. Lupita Ramos. Chairman, we've established a quorum. We're good to continue, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. Any public comments received by you, Jaime, and your staff?
No, sir, not at this time.
Okay, so then we'll proceed to item number 4, which is discussion and approval of the minutes that were provided to us in your email for the meeting. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes that we need to make before we approve? Anyone? If not, is there a motion to approve the minutes of May 5th as presented?
I so move, Chairman.
Thank you, Ms.
Second.
Lambert. Moved in second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Minutes are approved. Next is we have a discussion and presentation as it relates to regional flood plan for Region 15 Lower Rio Grande, contract number HC 21-60305-18. This will be a presentation by Hafen Associates. So at this time, I'll ask everyone that we allow them to do the presentation. If there's any questions, write them down. At the end of the presentation, we can go back and ask anything that anyone wishes to ask. Okay? I just want to be cognizant of everyone's time.
Thank you, Chairman. And just to let the committee know that the Drainage District has executed our agreement, fully executed our agreement with Hafen Associates. At this time, I'd like to introduce Ms. Cristina Leal, who will be running for this project. Ms. Leal?
Yes, Raul, will you please start the presentation? Let me see. Okay, good afternoon, Region 15 Chairman Flood Planning Group. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes. My name is Cristina Leal, and I'm a senior project manager here at HAF Associates and the lead for this regional flood planning effort. And I'm excited to be working with you on this region's first flood plan and really excited to get started. Today, I would like to briefly go over the scope of work we are tasked with. We'll review the goals and expectation for this plan, give you a status report of the work we have done to date, and give you a look ahead for work in these following months. The contract, as Jaime said, for this work was approved by Hidalgo County Drainage District on May 18th, and we have been working ever since. HAF Associates was contracted as the prime contractor on this project. We are working with S&B as a major sub and have B2Z working with us, assisting us with the GIS effort. We've also contracted with Tetra Tech to do work with forecasting and some of the impacts analysis that we will do later. And lastly, we have contracted with Pathfinders Public Affairs to assist with some of the outreach efforts for this flood plan. Helping me present today is one of HAF's lead planners, Kimberly Miller, and our GIS specialist, Brian McNamara. We are here today because in 2019, the Texas legislature established the act that defined the new state and flood planning process. The Water Development Board has published the scope of work associated with this planning effort, along with technical guidelines for the regional flood plan and the data submittal requirements. The first half of the requirements, defined by tasks 1 through 4, is what's going to be submitted in the technical memo, and they pertain to the assessment of the flood risk in the region and an analysis of the flood mitigation management practices across the basin. These initial tasks require a huge amount of data to be collected from the stakeholders in this region. The flood plan will be based on the assessment of the flood risk in the region for current conditions and for future conditions. We will facilitate the regional flood planning group's evaluation of the current floodplain management practices and help you establish floodplain management standards and goals for this region. I presented it this way in this long, wide linear calendar to drive home just how little time we really have to develop this plan. The first half of the plan, as we just discussed, is summarized in the technical memo that is defined in both of our contracts and has to be completed by January 7th, 2022. This is just 6 short months away. And when you factor in what goes on at the end of the year, the holidays, you'll need some time to review it, and we need time to put it together. So we'll need to have a draft memo to you by Thanksgiving, and that would give you the beginning part of December to review it and provide comments. The second half of the requirements build off of the work that we do in these first 4 tasks. The second half looks at the goals that the Regional Flood Planning Group has adopted and will recommend flood management evaluations, flood management strategies, and flood mitigation projects. It will look at the impacts that the proposed strategies and projects will have on the region and its water supply. We will lastly describe the region's flood planning preparedness, make administrative, regulatory, and legislative recommendations, and together we will analyze financing options for the flood infrastructure. Again, looking at the time we actually have to finish the draft, we again are looking at another 6 months. Our draft report will need to be completed by the end of May of 2022, so that you will have about a month to review it. You know, at this point, you're looking at all 9 chapters. You'll have a month to review it and provide us comment, and that'll give us a month to address the comments, so that we can in turn in the draft report to the Water Development Board by August 1st, 2022. Once this is submitted, we can put the draft out for comment and review at a public hearing. After incorporating comments received by the Water Development Board and those received at this public hearing, we can work to submit the final plan by January 10th of 2023. Next slide. So I will be providing you with a copy of a regional flood plan acronym decoder. I don't know if you've read the guidance thus far, but there are tons of acronyms. As these meetings continue, I know I will be using a lot of these acronyms without thinking. These terms may not be familiar to some as much as they are to others, but as this process moves along, I think we're all going to be very well versed. But until then, I'm going to provide this to you so you can print it out and keep it with you. And hopefully it's a useful tool during these beginning months. And Jaime, I'll send that to you so you can send it along. While this effort is modeled after the state water plan, there are some very distinct differences. The regional water planning process has been refined over 20 years, and we're just beginning to put together the first flood planning process. As this process plays out, I expect there will be some rough patches that we will probably have to work through and fine tune the metrics as we need to track. But eventually this will be a useful tool for the state to address flood risk. So let's discuss what we're trying to achieve with the plan and what we can expect to find. The plan will meet all the requirements of the Water Development Board. We will complete the tasks outlined in our contract and establish a solid foundation for future flood planning cycles that, like the state water plan, will span 5 years. What can we expect? I expect this plan will help the basin mitigate flooding in the future as the practices, the strategies, the projects that it outlines get implemented. I also expect to find, as we start this endeavor, to find some really good flood planning data in pockets, but I also expect to find many holes where there's just a lack of data. And I expect to find few truly regional flood planning efforts to build off of. This regional flood plan is meant to establish the criteria for entities to receive state funding for projects. However, if you review what the Water Development Board describes as a project, according to the published guidelines, I expect that there will be fewer projects listed in this first regional flood plan than that are currently included in CIPs and MDPs across the region. Lastly, the plan cannot be put together without input and collaboration from stakeholders and you. This slide of duties and roles really just reiterates what I just stated. The HAF team, we will perform all the data collection and facilitate discussions and outreach efforts needed to complete the scope of work related to this regional flood plan. We are the ones ultimately responsible for assembling the data and writing the report. However, we can't do this without your leadership or your help. You as a flood planning group will be responsible for reviewing the drafts that we submit to the Water Development Board for our region. And we need you to make sure that the stakeholders you represent and that you work with in your regions are participating in the outreach efforts associated with this regional flood plan. For example, I mentioned the survey we're putting out to intake all the available data requested by the Water Development Board for this effort. We will be hosting an online survey during the month of July. The survey will go live on Monday, July the 5th. And I need you to make sure that your stakeholders respond to this request, as we really can't stretch out our timeline anymore. You will be the ones determining the region's floodplain management goals, and you will need to approve the process we will propose for identifying flood management evaluations, flood management strategies, and flood mitigation projects. I have a list of entities that the surveys will go out to, and I will give this to Jaime and ask him to email you this list for your review. Please look at it. Let me know if I have missed any of the stakeholders. And we will discuss this survey a little more later in this presentation in a little bit more detail. Next slide. And I'm going to turn this over to Kimberly Miller to discuss our work on task 1.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kimberly Miller. As Christina said, I'm working on the planning side of the plan. And so the very first task that we have in chapter 1 is to characterize your region, which is very long and very diverse. We know there are tons of differences in the communities and the character of the communities that you serve, from Del Rio all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. And so we're setting sort of the framework in the first chapter that helps us understand what happens with the flood plan as we go through gathering additional data and understanding really what the flood risks are in front of you and facing you the next 30 years. There are 14 counties included in your area and 53 communities, but not only are we looking at the communities, as Christina was talking about in the survey, we're also looking at other entities within the region that have some sort of responsibility for flood planning. You encompass in Region 15, 12,400 square miles, which is pretty massive. And then you've had 31 major disaster declarations in the last 70 years, more or less. And a lot of those have really happened in very recent times, which is part of the reason that we're working on this plan with you guys right now. And so every county in our area has experienced at least one presidential disaster declaration, which I'm not sure we're happy about, but at least it gives us all something in common within the region. So what we're going to do in task 1 is look at the history of the region, look at existing floodplain studies and maps, what the underlying basis is that you use to regulate development and flood control in the future, how people are financing their projects, and as Christina said, also what you have on the books in the future. So all of this is a combination of data that's already been provided to us by the Water Development Board and data that we'll be collecting through the survey. So the next slide right here actually talks about the data that we have kind of as the baseline. So the Water Development Board gave us several different sources to start out with, from the flood infrastructure, the dams and levees that are in your region, to understanding the population that lives within the region and projecting out 30 years into the future so that we get an idea of where growth might happen as well. We supplemented what we were given by the Water Development Board with the agencies whose logos are right and are continuing to fill in gaps in the data. So great news, 93% of your counties actually participate in the National Flood Insurance Program. That's a much higher rate than a lot of the other regions that we're working in throughout the state. Next slide. And this is just giving you a closer up look. So if you see a region in green, that's a community that's actually participating in the NFIP. If you see a marker that's more on the gold or the orange side, that's showing where there are communities that aren't yet in the National Flood Insurance Program, unenrolled in that program. I won't spend a lot of time on the technical underlying here, but the floodplain quilt is how we understand what future flood risk is going to be. And some of the communities in this region are actually, they're sort of at the highest level of detail based on the number of studies that have happened to estimate flood risk. There's several of you guys who are operating at almost that high level, and then it's dropping down into, some areas that might not even be covered. So the color coding on here just really gives us a sense of where the most detailed studies have been, where preliminary studies, and kind of approximation of where floodplain exists. So let's go to the next slide. And this lets us zone into it a little bit more. We can see down in the lowest part of the basin, Cameron County, Willacy County, you probably have the most detailed information, and that helps you understand where flood risk is most likely to impact your community. Next. So there are two ways that the Water Development Board is asking us to look at your flood infrastructure, from the natural resources perspective and also from the built infrastructure perspective. So from natural resources side, we're actually looking at the existing data that we have from Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, as well as Fish and Wildlife Critical Habitat Areas. You all have a lot of state and nationally protected areas that are in this region that contribute to flood control for you. And so we'll be taking account of those as part of the resources that, that reduce flood risk for you. Let's go to the next slide. So existing infrastructure, this just symbolizes where your floods or where your dams and levees are located by point. Let's just zoom in on that so people can look at it a little bit more. So when Brian talks to you about the data collection in a moment, you'll actually see these reflected when you go in to enter your own data about your community. So everything that's in here is part of that underlying background. The existing infrastructure database also includes things like low water crossings and critical infrastructure, so we can see where your hospitals and fire stations are. Up in the north, the far left slide, you can see that there are a lot of low water crossings. And so we actually have these put in here. And so we know where there's an intersection between people and flood risk. So that's one of the things we'll be looking at. One of the final questions that will be asked on the survey that you guys will fill out or that you'll work with other communities to help out with is whether the infrastructure that protects you from floods is functional, non-functional, deficient, or non-deficient. And that's kind of a self-assessed rating of how well the level of service meets what your actual flood risk is and what kind of condition that the flood infrastructure that you have is in order to protect you from future. I'd like to turn it over now to Brian and let you talk about the online survey and the web map.
Recording in progress. Hi, Kimberly. Thank you, and hello, everybody else. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Brian McNamara. I'm a senior GIS professional here at Half Associates. I'll be serving as your GIS lead for this project, and today we're going to be going over the online web survey and web map portal and data portal we'll be asking you all to fill out. As Christina mentioned at the beginning, we're asking you to have this complete by the end of July, July 30th. You'll see that right here in the middle of the screen, and it's going to be live July 5th, so Monday next week. What we're looking at right here is the splash page to the URL you'll be given along with your login credentials. A couple things just to call out. There's some text at the top to just go over the project in general. And then important thing right in the middle, when it is due. So again, the July 30th date, since we have such a strict timeline, we really need to get the best data we can and get it quickly to develop a quality plan and get y'all some good data and good analysis for this regional study. Perfect. Once you log in, and again, you'll be using your community logins that was on the bottom left of the last screen, you'll be taken to this webpage, and this is your your login splash page. So when you come in, you're going to see your name there on the bottom. You have an example, your phone number, and your title. If any of that is wrong, please go ahead and just update it right in there, and you can hit submit. This online survey is interactive, so you'll see text boxes in every screen that you'll be able to fill in as you progress through. Right here, we'll take a minute to look at this. On the top, you're going to see your overall progress bar at 10%. And on the left-hand side, you're going to see kind of the waterfall path of the different screens you have left to fill out. So you can kind of gauge how much progress you have left to complete it. Again, you can save this and come back to it at any time. We estimate it takes about 30 minutes to complete. It is a little lengthy, so we can get a lot of useful data from everybody. And we do ask for you to submit data through this website as well. Now, we understand that, that might take a while to pull or to go find a file. So again, save and come back to it as you need. Right here, you'll see some preliminary numbers under the column what we found. So we did some initial analysis, pulling from different data layers, different data sets to get certain information as like a base level. So we have your projected population, estimated current population, and some other fields. And so we have what we estimate it to be. And then if you have a more accurate number or a better number, you're more than welcome to add it in there, and please do so. We feel confident about our numbers, but again, it's your region, it's your entity. So please update them if they need to be. Next slide, please. Okay, so once you fill out your information, you're going to get to the questions sections. And you see there's about 10 here on the left. Those are different risk criteria. As I mentioned, it's a little lengthy, about 90 questions, could take about 30 minutes. We kind of group them all in categories. So you'll have your floodplain management questions, and then some critical infrastructure and risk analysis. So we kind of keep them all in similar buckets. All right, once you click on the next page, and again, as you scroll down, you'll just see a next page button, and it'll walk you right through everything. Just answer the questions as you go through, whether it's a drop down or a free text, or checking different boxes as to what as it pertains to your entity. Next slide, please. On the bottom of each risk category, you're going to see two sections. Or two additional text boxes. Number 2 here is asking for additional data, and almost every risk category is going to ask for this. If you have any pertinent data, go ahead and please upload it. We'll take any file format. Zip files are fine, and you can add them as you can, and it'll save them as you go along, so you don't feel like you have to add them all at once. Additionally, there's a web links portion right there. So if you have a GIS data page or a data portal or any website that you feel may contribute to the success of this and would be pertinent to us, please feel free to go ahead and add it. Next slide, please. And then underneath that, you're going to see an interactive map button. And if you click on the go to map, it's going to bring you to a page like this. This is just an example HUC. You'll be looking down at your entities. So McAllen, Hidalgo, Willisey, Starr counties down there. And what we're asking here is for you to draw in any features that are pertinent. And on the top right-hand corner, you'll have a web map, a green web map instructions button. If you click on it, it's just going to give you a friendly reminder of what we're looking for. What's shown on here in the green and blue is the flood quilts that we mentioned, just to help give some a level of understanding on the initial data that we're seeking. And then on the bottom right, there's a search field. You can type in Brownsville.
Excuse me, Brian, I'm sorry. Can we please have everyone to use their phones, please?
Thanks.
Thank y'all. Thank you, Brian.
No worries. Absolutely. On the bottom right, you can just search for address to find the community that you want to draw a feature in. That'll be using the top right text box where it says add feature. And it's pretty user friendly. You just click on what you want to do. Everything's going to be popped right up. So you want to add a feature, just click add feature, then click on what you want to draw. And then you just click on it and you just click on your screen, and these are general boxes. No need to be precise. If it's for a block, get about the block. If it's for a city, you can do a city. These are more project specific, so they'll probably be more at the block level. And once you draw that in there, it's going to add some questions on the right are going to pop up. We're going to ask that you fill them out the best you can. And there's a series of questions. So you just scroll down and fill them out as you can and hit add. And just like the regular survey, you can save as you go. So if you fill up part of it and you have to go get the rest, just hit add and you can come back to it. That'll save it, and you can hit edit. When you return to your map, it's going to save everything for you, and you can update that information again. Just like that. And then there's each risk hazard is going to have its own web map to kind of keep every data criteria in its own bucket. So come back to the correct one and draw it in as you need to. Perfect. And then this is the critical facilities. Like I said, there's about 9 risk categories, from flood to current conditions, hazard mitigation, existing infrastructure. And I understand it's a little lengthy, the process, but it really gives us the best data to build a quality report and really do a really good regional analysis for every local entity. And again, all these instructions will be sent to you. This was just meant to familiarize everybody with it, so you kind of see the progress for it. There's instructions on both splash pages, and all the links will be sent to you and login information as well by July 5th. So thank you all very much, and I will turn it back over to Christina. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Christina.
Yes, sir.
I think I need to stop you all here if I can, because we've gone through a bunch of information and there might be some questions, and I don't want to not give opportunities for folks that might want to ask something specific about any of what we've already heard. And then you can come back and start, with task 3. So at this point, is anyone on that has any questions in regards to the task 1 and 2 that have been presented so far? And I know there's got to be questions, because I've got questions, but I want to give everybody an opportunity to ask.
Commissioner Garza, this is
yes, sir.
David Fuentes. I'd like to ask, I know that they were encouraging us to share this public comment, our partners, but most of our partners are already part of the pools of people that we should be asking to participate in this particular process.
Christina?
I'm not sure I understood the question, Commissioner. Are you asking if we have a list of people that we want to have?
So during, you guys had mentioned that this particular survey, right? I mean, you're asking us to go on July 5th and sorry about that, to go on July 5th and start to participate in that online survey, correct?
Correct.
I believe that the presentation included that we should encourage our partners to go on and submit their surveys as well. Were there people outside of this group that needed to fill out those surveys? And if there are people, like just in general, who might those other participants in this survey be?
So it's going to be all the communities, anyone with flood mitigation authority, and even the public can submit. It's a broad range of information we're taking in.
So potentially, I'm sorry for interrupting, but like cities that have like their own drainage systems, are we going to be asking irrigation districts that also?
Yes.
You're cutting in and out. The problem.
Is that what you mean by sending it to our partners like that?
Yes. Right.
Sorry, I just meant like if people have jurisdiction, we're going to be asking them to participate in this survey.
Yes, and that's why I say I have a list of who we're going to send the login information to. And it's going to include all the cities. It's going to include the counties. It's going to include the flood control districts, the drainage districts, irrigation districts that have confirmed that they do some drainage mitigation. And anyone, we're going to also have this link open on the website.
How about the IBWC?
Yes, IBWC, anyone with authority. And because the Water Development Board's asking for a broad range of information, there are places there where you can put in problem areas that flood, right? And this is one of the areas that we need to document, whether it's been studied or not. But if this area chronically floods, there are web maps where you can anyone can draw in this. The requirements that the Water Development Board have for the data that they want is broad. And so every single question, every entry point is correlating to a table entry or a GIS map that is required for this regional flood plan. And it's so big just because that is what is required of us. And instead of going to entities, multiple times, we just built out this huge online system so that we get the information in the format that we need it.
Christina, are you going to have a resource available for some of these entities? Because
yes,
even when I look at something like that, I'm kind of like, I would flunk that test, okay? Just by trying to, I could possibly do like my little site-specific area, but when you're wanting to look at large regions, and my concern is, what if someone doesn't respond from particular areas that are not identified, that are not on your mailing list, that are not, someone we can reach out to? How do we go about incorporating and making sure that all these areas are part of the plan?
And this is where I'm giving you the list. So if we're missing somebody on this initial, outreach, you let me know, and then we will take the efforts to try to reach them. And all we can do, Commissioner, is try and document that we tried.
Well, no, I want better than that. I want twist arms and make sure we get information, because the more information you have, the better document we'll produce.
No, so, definitely.
It's many times I keep going to places, to meetings where we go through this process, and then, on June of next year, when the plan is due, a bunch of folks show up and says, well, this is not included. This is not included. Why didn't you put this in there? I mean, Kimberly, you're shaking your head. I think you've been down this road before.
Yeah.
So you guys need to help us ensure that the public outreach, you can't depend totally on the planning group to do all this work. You've got to reach out somehow as our contractors to get the information that is needed. I've been at a conference for the last 4 days here on the island, and when I asked people about the regional flood planning group in our county area, the majority of the commissioners I talked to have not even heard of what this thing is. So we're going from a real blind spot to we need a dissertation on their area, with some of the questions are somewhat nebulous to answer for small folks that don't have a lot. There's 53 communities, I think you mentioned. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them don't have the resources to be able to do all that work. We have to reach out. You have to reach out to them.
Commissioner, we completely agree. And so this will be live for 4 weeks, and every week we're going to be monitoring it and reaching out to those who haven't responded to us, and it'll be prioritized. Definitely we're going to get the larger communities, the flood control districts, the counties, those are critical because they affect a larger population, and we'll work down the list that way. But definitely we have people ready and lined up to start assisting folks.
I just want to make sure
yes,
there's resources available from you all for folks that, are not attuned to all of those questions that we're put forth on that document that you put up.
No, we recognize that it's daunting. We recognize that there will be entities that can do this alone and others that are going to need help. And we are staffed and ready to step up the efforts as we need.
Are we going to use any other tool besides this online document? I mean, is there going to be any other type of information gathering opportunities for folks?
Well, I mean, just so that we progress and we're not waiting for the responses to come in on our own, we are reaching out and pulling out, you know, and this is kind of the next part of this slide is, you know, efforts that we're going to be talking about next month, you know, pertaining to goals. We're pulling information so that we can have productive information to build off of and not wait for this. But because what is required in this report is very detailed and there are tons of tables and GIS, and it needs to be in GIS format. There's a lot of information in it. So the timeline and the scope of the work doesn't really allow us to digitize, you know, if things are only on paper. They can submit that, we can digest it as much as we can and fill in some of these tables. But yeah, we're limited to what we can do for the sake of time to be able to meet the deadlines.
Christina, do you mind if I like add a layer kind of onto what you're saying based on some of the commissioners' questions? So because we understand that not everybody's going to want to jump into a long survey process, one of the things that we have backing that up is a technical assistance group so you start into the survey, it's more challenging than you thought. There is like a helpline that you can call and go through it. But I don't think we're thinking that everything is going to come through the survey. Like Christina was saying, we're also working with several layers of data already. So what we're coming through on the other side of the plan is a better understanding of what people are using for their flood planning information. So we've already got a little bit of a head start when we're beginning from all the data layers that we have. This survey is a way to organize it, but we do anticipate that we'll actually be talking directly to people, and we're already starting to pull out information before we even get those calls back and the responses back.
That gives me a better comfort level. Does anyone have any questions other than what has been asked on task 1 and 2?
Chairman, this is Joe
Okay.
Khalifa. I have a question.
I'm sorry, can you speak up a little louder?
Yes, this is Joe Khalifa. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Christina, I don't know when our next meeting is, and I guess I'm a little concerned about your list and you guys half being the ones to be working on this for the next 4 weeks. I guess I'm afraid that, you know, a particular city manager or mayor will, you know, hear that some consultant is calling and he may put it off and not react. And so I'm wondering how the board, the chairman or anybody else on the board may be able to make individual contacts with mayors or city managers that need to respond, because certainly we want everybody who's on your list to respond. And I know that's probably not going to be 100%, but we certainly want to get as much compliance as possible. So again, I just don't want to have a situation where they're not responding because the consultant is calling. And if you need help of the board members, I think you need to use us for that.
I'm not opposed to sharing, you know, who hasn't responded at the end of every week so that you know. And if there's anyone that you have a close relationship or any influence on and can pressure them to do it, we'd appreciate that, because honestly, the more data we have, the better.
Well, I guess we're going to talk about the pre-planning workshop in a little bit. Yes?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Chairman. I know that we were going to go over it briefly with the Texas Water Development Board, Ms. Megan.
Yeah, okay.
Yes,
Okay, so,
Commissioner Garza, I actually will just, I think this is a good time to bring that up. And in your question about whether there are other opportunities to gather input and gather data, I think it's actually required in the regional flood planning rules that the group hold at least 2 of those pre-planning meetings.
right,
That's exactly what those are for, right? So it's not as clearly the online survey and the web map are great ways to collect real data and real information. The pre-planning meetings will just be public meetings, and y'all are welcome to structure that, format it, and promote it in any way that you want in tandem with those resources by half.
okay. Because I mean, the region is so long. I mean, it's like, I don't know, 6 hours, I think. You drive one end to the other. And, you know, I think we need to do something in this outreach that is more regionalized, maybe divided into 3 areas and do something in the pre-planning process where we could have a little more active participation because folks need to know what's going on, you know?
And it could be something, because y'all are welcome to hold them in any place and in any format that you want to. And that can also be a place where you promote the online survey and web map, right? Where
Right.
it's a way either
Yeah.
presented by half or also encouraged by the RFPG members. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity there.
Okay, thank you. If no other comments, let's go on to task number 3. Thank you, Mr. Khalifa, for bringing it up.
Okay, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to introduce you to some of the concepts we will be discussing when we work toward completing the objectives of task 3. As you saw from Brian's presentation, we have assembled a lot of already readily available information into the online portal so we can intake all the information needed for completion of data and GIS data sets required by the Water Development Board. And like I said, every point is pertinent to something that is required in the plan. And on top of this, there's a lot of information that we're going to have to sift through and evaluate to complete this. And like I said, we've already started collecting some of this. We've started collecting some floodplain ordinances, development standards, information on NFIP participation and building standards, among other things, to try to begin a discussion on current floodplain management practices across the basin. We are planning to have this discussion next month in July. And so for now, I just want to introduce you to the topic. We also can use some insights from readily available sources like the Water Development Board's 2018 State Flood Assessment to understand what some of these current floodplain management practices. The process we propose to undertake the scope of work identified in 3A and 3B is depicted on this slide. To evaluate the floodplain management practices, the Regional Flood Planning Group should consider the effectiveness of the current design standards, development codes, permitted land uses, and other floodplain management practices as it relates to the existing population and development, and also future populations and property. The Regional Flood Planning Group should evaluate the current practices with input from stakeholders, like we've been discussing, and make recommendations for floodplain management practices, land use, and other strategies. The Regional Flood Planning Group may choose to adopt regional specific minimum floodplain management standards or land use standards or other standards that impact flood risk. We will use these goals to guide the overall approach and recommendations in the plan and ensure coherence of the entire plan. These may also be used in developing the recommendations for floodplain management. Next slide. As I mentioned, we will discuss the existing floodplain management practices across the basin and work toward work toward establishing goals next month. But what we know now, what we can expect that there will be a wide range of policies and standards across the region because of the differences in topography, the different industries, different rainfalls that fall, et cetera. There's a bunch of things that affect what standards are in place. We've included one of the tables, table 6, from the Water Development Board's Exhibit C, that is requiring that we summarize key floodplain management practices. And as you can see, I mean, we're looking in some cases at very basic things like, has the entity adopted any floodplain management regulations? Do they participate in the NFIP? Do they even have even higher standards? So this, what do we know now? As we showed you before, most of our basin has some flood regulations because a good majority participate in the NFIP. From the Water Development Board's quilt, oh yeah, this is what, next slide, Joel, I kind of covered that. From the quilt, we know that there are different levels of risk assessments that have been done. And like Kimberly explained, the blue is the detailed studies that have been done by the National Flood Study. And then there's lower layers, and then you have the base level engineering, which is a little bit rougher. And then you have others that are just digitized firm maps. And there's different available information out there, but it will be interesting to see what entities are actually using to define their risk. Next slide. In the 2018 flood assessment, if the 2018 flood assessment is representative of this basin, then most areas use the current firm maps to define their flood risk. And in some areas, these firm maps are decades old and not really applicable today. We know that when, that is already something that I expect to see, that most people use firm maps, even though there's better data out there. Next slide. We know that when we asked which activities were more important to communities' flood risk maps, they said it was important to identify flood risk outside of the major riverine areas. This tells me that there are needs for better flood risk mapping. They also wanted more base flood elevation data. I suspect these may be some of the recommendations or goals that the Regional Flood Planning Group will want to explore. So these are kind of some of the topics, I'm going to put out there what people are doing, what available information is out there, and then as a group we'll discuss, what kind of goals or recommendations we're going to want to do. So when we are assessing the various standards and practices within the basin, we'll want to consider how these standards or practices will allow, cause, encourage, or otherwise increase the flood risk. Where you have practices that look at things like having no adverse impacts, or maybe if you're requiring a higher fee burden requirement, this will reduce, the expectations this will reduce flood risk. Conversely, if you're going to have no standards or no enforcement, that's not going to reduce your flood risk. We want to look to the future when we're evaluating these floodplain management practices and standards. We're going to look at how will flood risk change as development grows, and what can you do to address these changes? Again, we're not just looking at policies, we're looking at land use development codes, practices. When we do these assessments of the practices and standards, we want to identify the gaps and the issues that may be propagating the issues, or the issues that they may be propagating. So this to me is like the heart of what the rest of the plan builds off of. And so we'll take a few months to go over this. Next slide. So I don't want to get too far ahead. I just wanted to give you a glimpse of our plan to discuss the goal setting and standards. So next month, we will introduce what goals and standards are and discuss region-wide or sub-region goals in August. I want to review a draft goal some draft goal statements based on our discussions that we have in July and refine them. In September, we will review or revise the goal statements and draft preliminary standards. If there is general consensus, we can move to adopt these goals, or we could use another month. We could use October to refine them and adopt them. But yeah, if we push it out too much, that's not going to give us much time to complete this. And next slide. So the process, like we discussed, we are going to gather the data for you, present it to you. Their guidance says that you should have public input. So, maybe at some of these meetings, you may want to encourage public participation or reach out to have one of these meetings, the pre-planning meetings, to encourage some discussion. But you should consider all the practices in conjunction with public input when you start presenting and developing your preliminary goals and standards. You're going to want to develop a list of short-term, standards and goals that can be completed in 10 years and another that can be completed in 30 years. You can do another, longer term, but these are required at minimum by the Water Development Board. And looking ahead, I know we were focused really on task 3 in the last discussion, but so in the month of July, like I said, we will be doing the data collection, and we will begin writing up chapters 1, 2, and 3. We'll discuss floodplain management goal setting, and we'll discuss the identification process for flood management evaluation, flood management strategies, and flood mitigation projects. And in August, again, we'll just continue discussing flood management practices. By that time, we should have a lot of information, hopefully, from the survey. We can start presenting regional flood maps, the flood planning, existing conditions, possibly even future conditions in August, and discuss floodplain management goals, at least the drafts. In September, we'll refine these management goals like we discussed, and I'd like to present draft copies of chapter 1 and 2 for your review to lighten the burden of the draft review next year, especially since the information will be fresh. And then in October, review a draft of chapter 3 if we're far enough along, and discuss potential FMEs, FMSs, and FMPs. And finally, use November to button up all the loose ends so that we can have the technical memo done by Thanksgiving, and be on our way to submitting this technical memo in January. So that is kind of a status. I mean, we have been doing a lot of data collection. Just wanted to let you know where we were and give you a glimpse of where we are going.
Any questions from anyone or any comments in regards to what we were presented? I know it was a lot of information. You're not coming through loud and clear. or clear and loud?
I think it was just feedback, Chairman.
Okay.
Chairman, this is Joe Khalifa. I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So Christina, when do you think the board will get your list of that you're sending and requesting the survey information from?
I have it ready. So after we hang up, I'll email it to Jaime so he can pass it on to y'all.
We'll make sure and send it out today to the committee, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
And anything anyone can do to encourage involvement, we need to reach out. You know, we've got to make this as good of a plan as we can with the input from all or as many stakeholders as we can get to reply. Otherwise, you know, it's not going to be complete in its entirety.
Chairman,
Any other?
another question.
Yeah.
Christina, you showed a list of partners, and I don't think I saw there, unless just correct me, is the Texas, the state department, the Division of Emergency Management. Are they assisting, or are you asking them for information, particularly on the history of flood, flooding disasters that we've had, over the past 25 years or whatever? Or I know they've got a lot of information on damage and that kind of stuff, but I didn't see them listed there. Are they there? Are you working with the Texas Division of Emergency Management?
We are assembling all the hazard mitigation action plans that we can get our hands on and reaching out for those. It is one of the requests in the survey. So yeah, Joe, we've recognized that there's a lot of really good information in there and a list of identified projects, right? Addressing flood need. So I believe they are part of our list, but definitely we are using the mitigation action plans as a resource.
Good.
This is Joe Hinojosa. I'd like to ask a question. Christina, you mentioned, and I don't want to hold your feet to the fire, but just in passing, you mentioned that a lot of the firm maps, they're decades old and they're, I guess, quote unquote, maybe outdated. What do you attribute that to? Is just the development that we're seeing down here, or can you give me a semblance of your thoughts on that aspect of these firm maps and what we're up against moving forward?
Well, there's some efforts underway right now. It wasn't shown on the BLE. FEMA's just completed base level engineering, which is kind of like a first step to adoption of these. So there's some BLE information for Hidalgo, Willacy, Cameron is being reviewed and about to be finalized. And so that is out. I don't know if Jaime, if you want to chime in.
Joe, let me follow up on that, Joe. And that's the discussion we've had a while back. Raul Cecin had a while back regarding the issues we have here with our county because of the levee situation. You know, this goes back way back for 2007 or so. Basically, as it stands right now, our area is the levees are not accredited by FEMA, so you can't update the FEMA maps because essentially the levees don't exist in FEMA's eyes right now based on the non-accreditation. They've been certified by IBWC, but there's some land site evaluations that need to take place for them to be accredited, for them to be counted in the studies, so you can have a true accurate FEMA map. Even though they've held up well during the last events and the diversion of water in 2010. Nevertheless, FEMA doesn't recognize it as an accredited levee, so therefore we cannot update our maps until that gets done. So that's the reason why the maps cannot be updated here in the area until that effort gets finalized and a lot of the work has been done already by the IBWC. There's still some openings that are still in place. They haven't been fully closed yet. So that's still ongoing, but we still have the biggest task is going to be on the land side evaluation to get that effort done. Drainage District is looking at that and seeing how we can work with all the different entities and municipalities for so we can get that issue addressed and then be able to submit it along with IWC to FEMA to start the accreditation process. So that's the reason why those maps have not been or cannot be updated.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Raul. Any other questions?
This is David Fuentes. I have one more just general comment / question. Christina, in the past, the COG has done some studies with respect to different flooding areas, particularly colonias that you guys actually participated in. How will those studies be incorporated into it, or if at all?
No, definitely. We're incorporating all the studies we've been involved with in the region, and I had Derek Nelson reach out that they have some good GIS. We're reaching out. Any good models and data that's out there, we need it so that we can start adding to this quilt that the Water Development Board has started. So Water Development Board has done the same thing. They're getting all the different studies that are out there. They kind of quilted them together, tied them. And we are just updating wherever we get better data. We're updating this quilt. And that's how we're going to be outlining and defining or developing these flood risk maps. So
you are utilizing existing data that's already, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Christina. If there's anything else, we'll call Jaime and pass questions on to you or send us the information where if someone has a question, they can email you, please. Okay?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. We'll move on to item number 6, which is discussion as appropriate on non-voting members, an update from the planning group sponsor, Jaime or Raul.
Chairman and committee members, as of today, I know that we had enlisted the assistance of Mr. Cruz here at the local COG to, reach out to the last non-voting member that we were wanting to include in our group from the Middle Rio Grande Development Council. At this time, I don't know if Mr. Manny Cruz, I believe he's on the line. Back in the middle of June, Mr. Cruz sent out an email requesting a representative from the Middle Rio Grande Development Council. As of June 17th, I followed up with Mr. Cruz, and he had not heard any or had not had a response back from any members or any representative from the Middle Rio Grande Development Council. Mr. Cruz, are you on the call, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, I am. Yeah, we were able to, at the beginning of the month, we attended the Texas Association of Regional Councils. Commissioner Garza and myself, we actually talked to the individual, and so he confirmed that he would provide an appointment letter, and I have been trying to contact him since then, and also send him an invite to this meeting, but have not heard back yet. So I'm just waiting on them.
So, Chairman, up to date, we haven't had a response.
Okay.
We'll follow your lead, Chairman.
Okay, yes, sir. We'll reach out again. Mr. Cruz will reach out again, and we'll see what we can do. Okay.
Yes,
Thank you so much, Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Item number 7 is a discussion and update from the Texas Water Development Board. And Jaime, next time put them as number 5.
Yes, sir. We'll do.
Okay.
Hey, everyone. Really, besides lifting up the pre-planning meeting, which I think we covered earlier, I only had one other update, which was to draw your attention to some additional resources that have been posted on our website. So again, if you go to the main TWDB flood planning webpage, and then under the right-hand menu, head to the first planning cycle documents webpage. That's where you'll find a lot of helpful things, including the scope of work, which this group has covered in detail at previous meetings. I presented on it. That scope of work overviews all tasks 1 through 10 of what will be in your regional flood plan. But in addition to that, we've developed some resources that are our technical guidelines. Christina referred to that. You'll also hear it referred to as Exhibit C. And I just want to encourage you all to make sure you look at that both now as an overview and as we go along delving into each task of your regional flood plan, because that Exhibit C, you'll find that it's broken down by task, and it includes not only text from the scope of work and the regional flood planning rules for each task, it also expands on those with additional guidance. So I think it's really going to help y'all represent your interest categories well, because it's going to answer a lot of your questions and help spur detailed discussion about each task, which is going to be helpful for putting together a great plan and helpful input for your consultants and so on and so forth. So again, go to the first planning cycle documents webpage. You'll see the scope of work and Exhibit C, which details all of those technical guidelines. It's also what it's called. And that's really all I have today, Commissioner. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Megan, for that information. Next, we're going to have a presentation, short presentation and discussion on the website. Jaime?
Yes, sir, Chairman. We've got, I'm going to share a screen here. Can anyone see my screen okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we are about 95% done, Chairman and committee members, with our website. As you can see here, we got a standard photo that they have, and all this information, I'd like some feedback once I give the website address once we go live and share it with the committee members. And just so you know, the actual website will be rgvregion15.org. rgvregion15.org. This will be the landing page. Pictures here, obviously, we'll take recommendations from any committee members. Chairman, if you all have any photos that you'd like to share via email, please forward them. This is subject to change. We have just a little description about Region 15, our mission, facts about Region 15 along with the population in our area. We will have, an option to have staff log in, depending on the information and data that we obtain. We did list our members in here. We still need some tweaking, some titles that we need to change, but we do have, for the most part, our voting members and non-voting members and each organization that they represent. If you notice out here to the right on most of the pages, we have our bylaws. At any time, anyone's interested on the bylaws, they can click in there and it'll give them a list of all our bylaws that were approved by the committee early on.
I mean, the only thing that I would say, even from the front page, is, the font that you're using there, if you're over 40, you're going to have a problem reading those letters.
Yes, sir. Hence the glasses. But yes, and we welcome all the feedback, sir. And all that is that we can work on from 1 minute to the next, sir, and can be adjusted very easily. The district does have our communication specialist that's working on this, and we do have access to make changes at any time, sir.
Okay.
So once I send the link out after this call, we'll send the link out to all the members. Please review it, and I welcome any feedback, so that way we know the changes to make. Our resources, of course, we have our agendas and our minutes that have already been approved. Again, our bylaws are listed on here. And another item that we had before the meeting started was a link to go live to our meetings. That will be part of the website also. It'll take you to our YouTube channel so you can view all our meetings live. Useful links. We've got, of course, the most important ones, all the state agencies that we work with currently. Any additional ones that y'all can think of, like I said, it would be just send an email over and we'll be more than happy to add those links. Our online calendar that'll have, our pre-planning meetings. Of course, any future committee meetings will be listed on here. Any dates that we need to work on. I know that I'll be working closely with HAF to receive any information that they have to be able to upload on here. HAF will be working also directly with our communications person here at the office to update the website as needed. And then, of course, our contact us page that has a list of the group sponsor, our planning chair, and of course, our contact at the Water Development Board. Any information needed can be filled out or requested can be filled out and sent. I'll receive that automatically via email.
So you will be sending this link to all of the members.
I will be sending
voting,
it to all of the members.
voting, and
Yes.
then please, I ask everyone, any comments, here's our chance for you to make sure that we present something to the public that would be easily accessible and easily readable and easily, understandable, most importantly, as to what we're trying to get done. So please reply.
Yes, please provide feedback, whatever it may be. Please, that'll be very helpful to completing this, and we can launch this as soon as next week is the plan, or even by the end of this week, sir. And then, like I said, any feedback we'll welcome, and we can make changes at any time.
I think we need to give at least a few days for everyone to give you some feedback, even though it can be launched and edited and improved as we move along. Okay, so if you're ready to launch, I think you should do so.
This is Joe. Just
Yes,
one
sir.
comment as a nod to Mr. Khalifa and what he mentioned on those links. I think it would be prudent to include the emergency response or emergency response agencies for, I guess, the respective counties that are involved.
Okay, sir. We can definitely add maybe the county websites within our region, links to that. That'll be helpful.
Very good. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
This is Joe Khalifa. Question.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Matt. Could you just repeat that address again?
The address, and it's not live right now, Mr. Khalifa, but
It's not live yet.
But it will be rgvregion15.org.
See, that's what I guess the question I want to raise is that our Region 15 is so much more than the Rio Grande Valley. I mean, it includes all the way to Del Rio. It includes the reservoirs and everything. So I'm just wondering if we, RGV kind of limits it to the Rio Grande Valley. I don't know if that's fair or accurate.
Well, there's an upper Rio Grande Valley flood planning group and a lower Rio Grande Valley flood planning group. And, since we have Region 15 lower Rio Grande, that you're putting on there, lower Rio Grande Valley Regional Flood Planning Group, right? I think that lower should be part of it, because lower, even at the Water Development Board, that's how we're named, lower Rio Grande Valley, or lower Rio Grande, not Valley, actually. There's no valley.
So
Regional
it'll just be LRG, I guess that's what you would look for, Lower Rio Grande, LRG Region 15 or something like that. We can look at that definitely, Chairman. Yes, sir.
Right. Yes. Good catch, Mr. Khalifa. Yeah, because we think the valley, and we think of, south of, what is it, Star maybe? And we definitely don't want to exclude anyone in this process.
For sure. Yes, sir. Thank you for that information, Mr. Khalifa.
The domain for this website is owned by who?
Easy Task, sir.
Okay. It's not going to be our domain.
No, sir. It'll be Easy Task, and then and through the drainage district. Yes, sir.
Yeah, but
not Region 15.
What happens if Easy Task is out of the picture for whatever reason? Then we would lose our website?
Well, we would definitely try to transfer it over to a different one.
Yeah, but if they own the domain, that would be very challenging to do.
Actually, Commissioner, I apologize. We the drainage district owns that domain, sir.
Okay, as long as you own it, I'm okay with that.
Yes, sir. Yeah. That is correct.
Okay.
Hi, Matt. Will board members be able to access meeting materials through a sign-in on this website, or?
That is an option for us. Yes, sir, Mr. Khalifa.
Yeah, I'm having a little trouble getting meeting materials and agendas and that kind of thing. So what would be easy for me would be able to have a board password or whatever where we can access meeting materials when we have our meetings.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And we can refine as we move along.
That's correct, Chairman.
Members, it's not a static thing where once you do it, you can't make changes. As we move along and if we find that we need to make adjustments, additions, or deletions, we always have that ability with this website. We want to make it as user friendly to not only the board members, but also the public and anyone else that might want information that we can provide for them.
That's correct, Chairman. And that's one of the main reasons that we requested access to this page so we can be able to change as needed. Information.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, there's still a lot of information we'd like to put on here, some additional maps and whatever other information the committee would like to see on there. Please let me know and we'll make sure and run it through the Chairman.
So send it out, Jaime. Everyone, please send some feedback. That's the only way that we can incorporate all these things. And send some feedback, and we'll consider it at our next meeting. If it's something that can just be done from the executive committee perspective, we can do that. That's not a problem. But we need to make sure that we hear everyone and we understand. And most importantly, when you Google what we want to portray, being able to be accessible to that. When you do a search, being able to find it, easily,
Yes, sir. Of course.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think that
Yes.
we're progressing and just get it going as soon as you can. Okay.
Of course. Yes, sir. I'll send it out and give the committee a couple of days, to provide feedback for 3 days. I know we're coming against the weekend holiday, but like I said, we can make changes as necessary. Chairman.
Are there any public comments that are online or anywhere else that we need to look at? No? Okay. You don't have any, Jaime?
I'm sorry, Commissioner. I was reading a chat from Commissioner Fuentes. What was that, sir?
Public comment?
No, sir. I do not have any public comments at this time, sir.
Okay.
None
I
received
know
today.
that. I'm sorry?
None received today, sir.
Okay. The next meeting, the next regular meeting, we can schedule on the 4th Wednesday of next month, unless we need to have something sooner. I think that we need to have the pre-planning meeting sooner than that. We need to get the first one, going. We will turn to you and Christina to help us set something up. We'll invite all the board members to that and all of the entities that Christina told us that were on her list. And we can do a Zoom meeting or a general large-scale Zoom meeting. It might be, as I said, and I'll visit with the executive committee. Maybe we can do one for the upper region, one for the middle region, and one for the lower region. It might be more accessible or more friendly to some of the folks since they know each other in those regions better than we do, and communicate more on one-on-one instead of one large group. So we'll visit on that, board members, and we will make sure and let you all know when we plan that meeting next, which should be shortly. Megan, what are the requirements for you on posting those meetings? Is it still the 7 days?
Sure. No, it's a great question. So the pre-planning meetings will need to have a 14-day notice. So Jaime, I'll work with Jaime on that, but they will need 2 weeks notice for those pre-planning meetings.
Okay. So it couldn't be any sooner than 2 weeks from where we discussed. Okay. Okay. So keep that in mind. And any other comments or questions before we go fishing?
Well,
I don't have anything, Chairman.
This is Joe. Just one thing. I am looking forward to when we can actually meet in person. I don't know what thoughts are there on that particular issue, Commissioner.
Yeah, the thoughts they're good thoughts, but it's I don't know how feasible that might be for some folks. So we might have to do a hybrid type of meeting. where we would meet somewhere sort of in between maybe, and also allow for Zoom, because to expect folks from Del Rio or Laredo to come down is kind of challenging for them. Unless we do it on the island, everybody wants to come to the island. But we'll require Megan to come to the island for a meeting, right?
That'll work.
But no, we'll keep those thoughts in mind, and everyone be thinking about that opportunity when it comes up to be able to do so. I know that Hidalgo County has said they have some facilities that we could use for those meetings if we needed them. We'll start working logistically on something, okay? But I think it's a good idea at some point in time to bring the group together at least once with the first 6 month phase and once with the second one.
I think that would be great. Thank you.
For the board. The pre-planning group is another. Any other comments?
Commissioner Garza, the COG facilities are always available to you guys.
I know you've been so kind to us, Manny. We appreciate your offer, okay?
It's not the island, but hey, we can put a picture up there.
Yeah. Well, that's why I covered up my background, because I'm laying on the beach over here.
Chairman, this is Joe Khalifa. Just wondering, I wanted to ask Christina where she's located, where their offices are, and how many of her people are located in.
Christina Leon?
Yes, I'm located in McAllen, but my team is all over Texas. I think Kimberly's in Fort Worth, Brian's in Austin. Yeah, we're working across the state on this.
Are you though in an office or are you working remotely?
We're doing both.
So where's your office?
Oh, it's on Military Highway in McAllen, between Ware Road and Sherry.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think contact information is important for board members, especially since we awarded the contract. And I think that if contact information is shared, it'd be a little bit comforting to know that, we can reach out or email and request information or whatever. Okay.
That information will also be on the website, Chairman.
Okay. Anything else? If not, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting.
So move.
Thank you all.
I second.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye. Have a great day and a good 4th of July.
Happy 4th of July, everyone.
Thank you.